Good morning, Mets fans, and happy Thursday. Welcome to Driving with Mr. Met. I am Mr. Met, and I know I said I was going to have a video recorded yesterday, but with the sort of early start of last night's game, it started an hour early for some odd reason. I decided, forget it, I'll just do a twofer today, and that's what I did. So I think in the process, I was also hoping that I could talk about ending the series on a positive note, but that did not happen last night. The Mets ended up dropping 2 out of 3 to the Phillies, so I want to talk about those two games and the series that starts up this evening in Washington, D.C. I was reading Mets blog this morning, and the loss last night put the Mets at 12 games under 500 at 70-82, and secured a second consecutive losing season. And the part that I found interesting, that I don't know if I just block it out or what, but it was the 8th losing season in the last 10 years. So basically what that means is that outside of the 2 years during which the Mets went to the playoffs, it'd be 2015 and 2016, every other year in the last 10 has been a losing one. So I honestly didn't realize it. And I guess, you know, when you're this close to the team and as a fan, you just are a fan no matter what, and you don't pay attention to the wins and losses as much. And I'm probably explaining that wrong, but I was surprised. I was surprised that 8 out of the last 10 years have been losing ones, because I feel like there have been positives in a lot of the last 10 years. There's certainly been some negatives as well. Kind of thinking of the David Wright quote from the NLCS clincher, where he said, there's been some good, there's been some bad, but this is all sort of makes it worth it. And he's right. I mean, there were good and bad moments. Even in losing seasons, there have been good moments. 2012, Harvey coming in. 2013, Harvey taking the league by storm. 2014, DeGrom winning Rookie of the Year. I mean, these are losing seasons. Also 2012, Dickey winning the Cy Young, which I expect Jacob DeGrom will repeat this year in a losing season. So, there are positives if you want to find them in losing seasons. Would it be a lot easier to not have to search hard for a positive? Absolutely, but we're Mets fans, we're used to that. So, getting back to the Phillies series, the Mets took the opener. I was feeling pretty good about that, and then they went and dropped the last 2 to the Phillies, who are clinging to life barely by a thread in hopes of securing a second wild card spot in the National League. The Mets did drop those 2 games with Matz and Syndergaard on the mound. Matz actually pitched a little bit better than Syndergaard did, despite his control efforts. At least Matz went 5 innings. Last night, Syndergaard only went 4. He threw almost 90 pitches in those 4 innings. And I think there's something about the way the Phillies attack Noah Syndergaard. They've found his kryptonite, and I'm not exactly sure what it is. And again, I've said this many times, I don't get to watch the Phillies games. I'm blacked out of all the Phillies games, so I don't get to see what they're doing that other teams maybe aren't doing. But don't forget, they're the ones that had the 12 hits against Syndergaard earlier this season in a single start. They're the ones that pushed him out of a start last night in 4 innings. They're also the team that caused DeGrom to throw 45 pitches in 1 inning earlier in the season. He managed to escape like the magician that he is without giving up a run, but still, the Phillies' approach is interesting because they seem to have been able to attack the Mets starters differently than a lot of other teams have. And that'll be interesting to watch going forward, whether it's something that they're doing intentionally or whether it's just their general approach against all teams and it happens to work best against the Mets. I don't know. But it was interesting to see that happen. The other thing that sticks out over the last 2 games, and you can sort of trace this back over the weekend and really going back a long ways, is the bullpen. The Mets bullpen is I don't want to call it a disaster because it's better than it's been earlier in the year. In the month of June, the bullpen was so horrendous. They're the number one cause for the poor June this season. And the instability in the bullpen was a problem. The Mets have since called up some young arms. Of course, Familia was traded. But the bullpen needs to be addressed for next season, and it needs to be really addressed for next season. It can't be go out and sign another Anthony Swarzak. And I've talked about this before. I'm in the minority, I think, with the idea that the bullpen can be fixed without signing an expensive free agent, or more than one expensive free agent. As we're seeing, as I said many times on this show, as we're seeing with Swarzak, with Jerry Blevins, with the litany of relievers that Colorado has signed in the offseason. The bullpen is too volatile to hand out big contracts to. I'm sorry, I just don't feel like that's the best use of money when talking about personnel. I would much rather see the Mets continue to push forward with the younger talent that they have now while making some adjustments to it. So, and I'm not suggesting you keep running out the same guys. I'm saying you start adjusting who's pitching when and where. And I'm sorry, I think Paul Sewald and Jacob Rame, both of whom are probably wonderful people, they've had enough chances now and proven enough times that they cannot be counted on. And they should therefore not be a part of the team going forward. I think they should both be given their walking papers, wished luck on future endeavors, and hope that they sign on with another team and find some success elsewhere, because as many times as they've been given the chance to do it here, they've failed. So again, the bullpen has been a problem. They were a problem last night. They were an even bigger problem the night before against the Phillies, and it needs to be addressed. The other thing that I'm growing more and more warm to is the idea of signing Wilson Ramos to be the catcher next year. Now, again, I don't get to see these games because it's the Phillies, but I swear to God, every time Wilson Ramos comes to the plate against the Mets, he gets a hit. It's insane. I would sign Ramos if for no other reason than to just give him no chances to beat us. Because if he's on the Mets bench, even if he's injured, he can't come into the game as a pinch hitter for the opposing team and drive in a go-ahead run or a winning run or something like that. So I'm half joking when I say let's sign Wilson Ramos, but I'm also half serious, because I do think that despite his injury problems, he is a proven major league level catcher. He can hit, he can field, he can call games, and he's just often injured, and so he fits right in with the Mets. So last things last, or last things first, or first things last, whatever. Last thing I want to talk about is the upcoming 4-game set with the Nats. Tonight, Jacob Vargas. I always call him Jacob Vargas. Jason Vargas. Jacob Vargas is an actor. Jason Vargas is a pitcher. Jacob Vargas, the actor, may actually be a better pitcher than Jason Vargas, but we don't know that. Anyway, Jason Vargas, the pitcher for the Mets, will be on the mound in Washington, D.C., taking on Roid Rage himself, Max Scherzer, and the Washington Nationals. I hope that the Mets take split this series, rather, at the very least, and take 3 out of 4 from the Nationals. I really want to send a message to the Nats that this is a new Mets team. This is not the same team that was trounced a month and a half ago in D.C. This is a different team. We're not going to take anything lying down. I want to see Anthony Rendon backed off the plate in his first at-bat. And Vargas is a guy who will do it with his 83-mile-an-hour fastball. He doesn't care. And if the ump gives him any shit, he'll just yell back at the ump. Kind of like that about Vargas. He has like no fuse at all. He goes from 0 to 120 in a split second. But I do want to see the Mets send a message. I also was expecting this to be a weekend where Scherzer and DeGrom were going to face one another, and apparently that won't happen. Either the Nats moved Scherzer up, because the Mets didn't change anything with Jake, so the Nats must have moved Scherzer up to start tonight, and I think it's a cheap shot, because Jake is pitching tomorrow, and I think Scherzer wanted to get a win, and I think the Nats wanted to get him a win. And I'm speculating, of course, I don't know this, but it's easier to get a win against Vargas than it is against DeGrom. Anyway, that'll wrap it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow to talk about how badly the Mets get beat up tonight with Vargas on the mound. But I thank you for watching. I appreciate it, as I always do. Follow me on Twitter if you're not already doing so. My Twitter is at Mr_Met. That's MISTER_MET. And as always, let's go Mets.